Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are starting off the Virtual Island Summit. This is the first session after our official opening. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating today. We are delighted. It is our 6th anniversary here at the island, at the Virtual Island Summit, and we are more than enthusiastic of having the opportunity again to share with people from around the globe. Welcome. This is day one of the Virtual Island Summit. My name is Christian Zaquino. I am the Director of Operations at Island Innovation. I am an islander from Margarita Island in the Caribbean, just off the coast of Venezuela, but I'm currently based on the beautiful coast of Galicia in Spain. Before we begin, let me tell you that Island Innovation, you probably know this already, but we have a lot of newcomers as well every year to the summit. Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include island development strategies, communications, government affairs, impact program design, coordination, capacity building, and of course, events like the one that we are hosting today. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information available in the chat. I am very happy to be presenting this session titled Decarbonizing Island Grids, Strategies for a Sustainable Future. Before we begin, you should see a poll appear right now on your screen. And we have only 3 questions, easy to answer. Let us know which is your gender, what region are you connecting from, what sector do you belong to, and what industry do you belong to. This way we will get to know each other before starting this session. This session explores the unique challenges and innovative solutions for decarbonizing island electricity grids. You know that islands often rely on imported fossil fuels for energy, leading to both high costs and high environmental impact. The discussion that we will have on this panel today will cover renewable energy integration, energy storage technologies, microgrid development, and policy frameworks that are essential for transitioning to a sustainable and resilient energy systems. Case studies from various islands will illustrate successful implementations and lessons learned, providing a comprehensive understanding of the path towards carbon-neutral island grids. I invite you to please make use of the chat function to introduce yourself. Let us know when you're joining from, and you can make any comments during the session, but please note that if you have any questions to any of the panelists, please go ahead and use the Q&A function. Then on the Q&A section part of the session, we will address all of those according to the time that we have available. All right, so I see a lot of people participating in the chat from Mauritius, from St. Kitts, from Prince Edward Island, from the Cayman Islands, from Barcelona in Spain, from St. Helena, beautiful island, thank you. From Scotland, thank you everyone. From Italy, Belgium, California in the US, Wales, Guadeloupe, Shropshire, Malaysia, New York, Singapore, India, Trinidad and Tobago, Fiji, thank you so much. South Africa, Chile, a lot of people joining us from different regions in the globe. I'm glad for that. All right, so we have the poll results that you will see on your screen. And we have, let's say, more or less even split between male, female, and other genders in the session. We have people connecting from the Caribbean and Europe, basically tied, followed by North America, Africa, the Pacific, Asia, and the Indian Ocean. Thank you for joining us. The sector that we have here, most of you, more than 50% come from the private sector, but we have a tie between government, NGO, academia, and other sectors. And the industry, we have a lot of people from the energy sector, which is to be expected given the topic of the session, followed by environmental services, management consulting, finance, and others. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this session, Mr. Michael Drake, partner and board member of McInnes Cooper. Michael, you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone. It's my great privilege to be here with you today for the very first panel session of the Virtual Island Summit. I'm coming to you today from beautiful Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada, where we hosted the Global Sustainability Island Summit this past May, and we were extremely delighted to do so. So I'm looking forward to seeing some familiar faces from last May and to meeting many more of you throughout the course of the Virtual Island Summit. What I'd like to do now is take the opportunity to introduce you to our panel members who will be talking to us about decarbonizing island grids. And rather than me introduce them, I'd like you to hear their voices and where they're from. So Danon, perhaps we'll begin with you. Who are you? Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about what you're going to bring to the panel today. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're right. Hello, everybody. I'm Danon Bimadu from Mauritius. I represent the Mauritius Renewable Energy Agency. The agency has the mandate to promote renewable energy in Mauritius. And in Mauritius, we've pledged to reach 60% of renewable energy by 2030. And so I'm going to, my presentation to show you how we think we should do this. And, the thing is that, as I said, we always have many issues, and we'll have the time to discuss about it.
Thank you so much, Danon. Avril, perhaps tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Hello, everybody. My name is Avril Niharki. I'm the manager of the Aran Islands Energy Cooperative. So we're a small community-owned cooperative based on the Aran Islands, which is on the very west coast of Ireland, just off the County Galway. We represent about 2,000 island residents across the 3 Aran Islands. Our overall objectives are to decarbonise the islands and also create I suppose an income, or to make the islands more self-sufficient and autonomous in terms of our energy consumption. At the moment, everything is imported, including our electricity, but also other fossil fuels. And we've made a lot of progress. We have a lot of homes have been retrofitted, a lot of we help households to leverage any grant funding that's available from the government. And people are very open to new technologies like heat pumps and solar panels and things like that. Over the last 10 years or more. And so while we've made a lot of progress, we also have an awful lot of challenges, and the grid is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have here.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. Claire, you're next.
Hello, good afternoon from Brussels. I'm Claire Healy. I'm a policy and project officer at the CPMR Islands Commission. So we are a network of regional authorities of island regions in Europe, in all sea basins of Europe. So I will tell you more about our work to foster the decarbonation of islands.
Thank you, Claire. We're looking forward to it. David, you're next on my list.
Hi, good day or good morning, everyone. My name is David Gums. I'm from Anguilla, small island in the Eastern Caribbean, just like the other islands, struggling with the challenge of the energy transition. But I represent the Rocky Mountain Institute, also known as RMI, and I am the director of the Islands program, focused on supporting the Caribbean in their transition to renewable energy. As you can imagine, there's an insurmountable, in many cases, hurdles that are in their way, and we help them to unblock and in various ways, from supporting the regulatory processes to implementation of renewable energy, steel in the ground, and all of the hurdles, including finance and some of the other areas that projects get stuck.
Thank you so much, David. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Zakia, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zakia Samaru. I'm a research scholar at the Rainer Lemon Institute, a research institute based here in Berlin. I'm originally from Mauritius, and I study the decarbonization strategies of small island states, looking particularly at the transport sector, but also its intersection with energy and electricity. Having done extensive modeling exercises and seeing the technological feasibility of a lot of these low carbon solutions, I'm now very interested in a lot of what David said and looking at the hurdles and the power dynamics of our current energy regime. And I'm excited to share some of our insights on that. Thank you.
Well, we're excited to hear about some of those insights, Zakia. And last but not least, of our presenters today, Lucia.
Hello, my name is Lucia Rakočević, and I'm an R&D manager at a Belgian consulting company, Tinky, and we're part of the consortium that's currently operating the European Commission EU Island Secretariat. And here I'm joining on behalf of the Secretariat, and I'll be presenting what we do and how we work with European islands, and I'll be presenting our analysis of the electricity grids of non-interconnected islands, specifically on how to decarbonize and integrate more variable renewables.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So, folks, the way we're going to proceed for the bulk of our presentation this morning is we're going to allow each one of our presenters to present, and then we will have a Q&A session toward the end, and then we will close out with about a 45-second closing statement from each of our session members at the end. So without further ado, to keep things rolling and be within our time constraints, we're going to turn now to Danon, who will give us our first presentation.
There we go. You can see my screen. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and it appears that your presentation is loaded. You're good to go.
Great. Mauritius has pledged to reach 60% of renewable energy by 2030, to phase out coal, to reduce GHG emission by 40%, and to increase its energy efficiency by 10%. All these should be done by 2030. And what has been done is that in 2022, we have a renewable energy roadmap that has been published, which is live on the Marina website. We've came with several incentives so as to reach this 60% target. By 2025, we are confident to reach, let's say, halfway. This is what, let's say, the easiest part, but I guess there's much more to do to reach the 60% by 2030. We have several incentives we have put in place. I mean, for the purchase of EV vehicles, we have negative tax. We encourage people who are owner of EV vehicle to be able to install PV on their rooftop. As we have in Mauritius, we have only one grid, and also there's only one utility, which is the sole buyer and seller of electricity. Normally, for a residential installation, it is limited to the consumption, but for EV vehicle owners, you can go up to 10 kilowatt. There has been also a scheme for the industry, which is the CNIS, Carbon Neutral Industry Scheme. It was open for an allocation of 100 megawatts, but the appetite was, the application that we received was 200 megawatts. So there seemed to be an appetite, and the government has opened the tap to allow this 200 megawatt. There's a special scheme at Marina, which is called the NCEP. This is normally for innovative and emerging technologies. As you know, we cannot bet only on solar and wind power, so we need to venture in other types of technologies. And this is the role of Marina, to encourage the innovative technologies, and we de-risk these technologies so as to make it bankable. Many also, incentives in terms of fiscal incentives for investors. And one of the a scheme that has been through the NCEP was a photovoltaic scheme, which was new to Mauritius. And now the government, after having de-risking this technology, the government has made it available to everyone. And to phase out the coal, there has been the publication of the National Biomass Framework, which was published last year, so as to show how we can reach the goal of phase out coal by 2030. As an island, we have many issues. The principal one will be scarcity of land. So we cannot just, give all of our land only for renewable energy. We have to also to cater for food security. And this is why we came with this agrivoltaic scheme. Very small island, we cannot increase our land surface, but we have also the opportunities. Access to finance is still a problem. The biomass framework seems to be very difficult to implement, despite we know where we want to do. There's technology limit, as I mentioned, in terms of not only we cannot, but not only on solar and wind, as these brings too much intermittency on the grid. And the emerging technologies, as some of them have not even give a proof of concept, and it is quite lengthy for implementation. There's all gaps that need to be closed. We have to, despite we are upgrading our existing infrastructure, we need to continue on that. PPAs need to be revamped so as to make this project more bankable and to get access to these finance. When people are well in their comfort zone, they don't want to change. Why do we have to change where coal is available? And why do we need to look for other types of renewable energy? Local banks are not used to that amount of investment. As you know, renewable energy needs huge capex. And we need to continue this engagement session. What we think can be done is that we have the potential to do floating PV, so no need to use land only for renewable energy. What we have assessed in Mauritius is that we have the potential of 700 of megawatt inland floating PV. Don't forget that Mauritius is an island, tropical island, and we are often visited by cyclones, so we have to cater over these. The rooftop potential also, let's say for residential and for commercial buildings, we have assessed some 700 to 800 megawatt. But the thing is that what are we going to do during off-peak? What are we going to do with this excess of renewable energy? And this is where the green hydrogen is a solution. It can be a solution to batteries. It can be a new industry, not only for renewable energy, but we can use it for the transport sector. And also the excess can be used for exportation. So creation of a new industry. Offshore wind is also a solution. We have already started a pre-feasibility for offshore wind. Despite being a SIDS, we're a large ocean country, so we have to tap in also for the other renewable ocean renewables. The biomass framework has identified 7,000 to 8,000 of abandoned land, agricultural land. And as you know, Mauritius is a producer of sugar, so we cultivate much sugarcane. And this 8,000 hectares of abandoned land can be used for the cultivation of hemp, which is which can be harvested at least 3 times a year. And the byproduct of hemp is quite a value-added product, and the bagasse can be used for the biomass framework. I mean, the biomass, when the coal is going to be phased out, this will help to reduce the balance of payment. And I think the hydro also can be exploited, despite a small island with very, very small rivers, nearly streams. But as you know, streams make rivers, and construction of dams can be used not only for the generation of electricity, but also for the supply of water, which is also a concern. I hope that I have been able to share the maximum within the 7 minutes allocated. Thank you.
You did very well within 7 minutes. 7 minutes is both a very long time and a very short time, depending on the ground that you wish to cover. You did quite well. So, Avril, you are next. We're just a few minutes behind, and I think we're going to be okay as we get closer towards the end. But if we can stay within our 7-minute window, that would be ever so helpful. So, over to you, Avril.
Hi again, everybody. Yeah, I think I can manage it all within the 7 minutes, hopefully. So, as I explained earlier, our cooperative was first established in 2012 by a group of local islanders. So we have about 1,300 full-time residents, and the population goes up to about 2,000 in the summer months, because we have tourism is our main industry on the islands. So for a very short period of time, things get very, very busy, and we can have, over 2,000 people a day visiting Inishmore, which is the largest island where I live. And quite a lot of intensive tourism on Inisheer as well, which is the smallest, and then the middle island gets a little bit less. But this group of islanders anyway came together and decided that they wanted to, I suppose, see the energy transition as an opportunity for the islands, as well as just a huge challenge to overcome and an obstacle for us. And so they saw that there was an opportunity for us to own a source of energy for ourselves, and to use that to create kind of a community benefit fund that could be used, to subsidize further energy works or retrofitting, but also to help create services that are essential or that might be nice to have, because a lot of the services that we have are on the mainland. We depend on our connection to the mainland for a lot of really basic things. And we're lucky that we are well serviced, but it still would be a lot more, I suppose, comfortable for people living on the islands to be able to access more things here. So that was kind of one of the main drivers, really, was that we could see this as an opportunity. And right away, we began, I suppose, helping householders to access funding for home renovation, for insulation of their buildings. A lot of the buildings on the islands are built of solid stone, so they're very difficult to insulate. It's mostly limestone on the islands, so that's one huge challenge. Then most houses at the time, almost every house had an oil or kerosene boiler heating their house. Air conditioning isn't something that we need to worry about on the island. It's only heating in this part of the world. And then, all of the cars on the island were diesel. We have no petrol pumps on the island, but every car uses diesel, or I did, at least at this stage. And so over the years, we have retrofitted about 50% of the buildings across the 3 islands to some degree. So they might not all have reached like a really high level of insulation and energy efficiency, but 50% of the buildings have had some works done and some upgrades done. And then I suppose that was one branch of the tree. The other branch for us, as well as electrifying the transport and heat sectors, was to generate our own electricity. And so far, we have made a lot of progress on installing small-scale solar installations, PV installations on private buildings, community buildings, some businesses as well. We have about 20, 25 electric vehicles on the islands, and more houses are adopting this technology as we go along. The big project for us was to develop a community scale or community-owned energy generation station. And in, I suppose, from 2012 almost, up until late last year, we were working towards a community-owned wind farm. This seemed like a no-brainer. We had a lot of assistance from the Clean Energy for EU Islands Secretariat. We did some of the modelling. We looked at the wind, which we have in abundance here in the islands. And it seemed like a really positive project. We have actually, I should mention, had turbines on one of the smaller, on the middle island before, and they were connected directly to a desalination unit at the time. And unfortunately, the organisation that owned them went into receivership, and so we lost those turbines. And we wanted to reinstate them on the same site. But because of the Natura 2000 guidelines and a lot of the environmental protections that have come into effect since those turbines were erected, and because the islands are designated an iconic landscape, they're very popular with tourists because we have a really unique landscape here. It was decided by the planning authority that due to the visual and environmental impact of a turbine, which was one turbine at the time that we were looking at, this project was not viable anymore. One of the big issues that we came across and we kind of had adapted our project to suit it at the time, we originally sought a 2.3 megawatt connection, and that was reduced down by our DSO to 650 kilowatts. And this is where the grid constraints and the grid problems come in, because we have a 3 megawatt subsea interconnector from the mainland to the islands. So it comes from the mainland to the biggest island, and it branches off to the middle island and then to the smallest island. And we are not in a position to lay, our main substation is on the mainland. And as a community group, and even as if we weren't a community group, if we were a private developer, it wouldn't make financial sense for us to run a subsea cable of that length back to the mainland to export any electricity, as you normally would on the mainland in Ireland. If you put up a turbine, you have a dedicated export line back to the substation. So our project would have to feed the electricity that we generate into the local distribution network on the islands. And it was decided that anything above 650 kilowatts would cause voltage issues locally. And so that's our main, I suppose, constraint at the moment, is that we cannot go above this. Obviously, now we also know that wind is no longer an option. So we have shifted and are now looking towards solar. I suppose 10 years ago, maybe solar wasn't a thing at all really in Ireland, and technology has come an awful long way in that time. So it is looking like a very, I suppose, attractive project to us and also to the planning authority. The environmental impact of it isn't seen to be as extreme, but our grid constraints and the 650 kilowatt constraint is really what's holding us back at the moment. And so as we increase the demand, the electrification of transport and heat on the island will obviously increase the electrical demand of the islands. More and more householders hopefully will be generating their own privately owned power. But we do also feel that it's important for us to have a larger generator, a community-owned generator, that will then provide a community benefit income to the islands. And that's where we see that's the real opportunity for us as islanders to own our own power, to be a little bit more self-sufficient and autonomous when it comes to our energy production. At the moment, we have, I think, one of the biggest challenges for us to try and do something about this constraint is that we have very limited kind of relationship with our DSO, and because we have that interconnector to the mainland, and they're obviously, along with every other country, looking to decarbonize the national grid, it is maybe felt that when the national grid is decarbonized, our grid will be decarbonized too. And so they maybe don't see the importance of generating this energy locally. We also had a study done. I'm trying to get everything out here in the short space of time, but we've also had a study done in 2018. We did the clean energy transition agenda through our work with the Secretariat. We also had an energy master plan published, and that found that there are losses of 52% on the cable. So even from that point of view alone, I think it highlights the importance of generating the energy locally. There is a huge appetite and massive community support for our project. The residents of the island support it, but that is really what's holding us back. Now, 650 kilowatts will have a significant impact on the on our carbon footprint of the electrical system on the islands, but it's not going to allow us to decarbonize it completely. And so we need to look at a lot of innovative solutions and ways that we can come around this. We've looked at storage. We continue to look at storage options. Storage by itself is seen as extra generation by the DSO when you look for a grid connection to connect a storage to it. And if you combine storage with a generator, you can still only export that 650 kilowatts at any one time. So we need to try and, I suppose, improve maybe our relationship with the DSO, but also to find maybe innovative solutions that they might be open to trialing and build on it from there. So that's our biggest challenge at the moment. And I hope everybody's been able to follow that. And I hope that I did okay time-wise as well, because I haven't been keeping an eye on the clock. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Oh, you did wonderfully, Avril. Thank you so much. And I listened with interest because a lot of the things that you're describing are bear some similarities to my own home province here in Prince Edward Island with undersea cables and striving for energy self-sufficiency. So thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Next up, we have Claire. Please fire away.
Thank you. I have some slides. I will now try to share them. Okay. So please let me know if you can see them.
Yes, we can see, Claire.
Perfect, thank you. So hello, everybody. I'm Claire Haley. I'm a Policy and Project Officer at the CPMR Islands Commission. And today I'm very happy to be with you to present our work fostering decarbonization in EU islands. So very briefly, what is the CPMR Islands Commission? We are one of the 6 geographical commissions of the CPMR, and we are a network of 18 EU islands regional authorities from 5 sea basins all across Europe. What we do is we advocate for a better recognition in EU policies of the specific strengths and challenges of islands. And we also foster interregional cooperation between islands through projects and best practices exchanges. And so we work on a number of different topics of relevance to our members, including energy. So let me start this presentation by providing you a main overview of the main policies for decarbonization in the EU. So it all started with the EU Green Deal, which was launched by the European Commission to set the EU on track to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And indeed, within this framework, we identified that energy is a key sector to decarbonize, as it represents 75% of all EU emissions. And in addition of this climate imperative, the aggression of Russia on Ukraine really highlighted the need for a strategic autonomy for energy supply in Europe. And so shifting from fossil fuels towards renewable energy sources is also a way to achieve energy autonomy. And this is true at EU level, but this is also true in the insular context, where we know that we have larger reflections going on to reduce the dependency towards mainland. And so all of this is reflected into the Fit for 55 and the Repower EU frameworks with some ambitious targets for 2030. First, the net reduction of CO2 emissions by at least 55%, and to reach at least 42.5% of renewable energy sources in the EU mix, and we aim for 45%. So in this framework, where do EU islands stand? As we know, the islands face specific constraints in terms of grids, which tends to be underdeveloped compared to the mainland. The islands face also some special constraints, a limited market size, and they also face often a limited availability of a specialized workforce for renewables. And on top of that, sometimes they face some inadequate legal frameworks, which can be an additional challenge for them to reach the decarbonization objectives. But at the same time, the islands have a unique potential. They have some abundant renewable energy sources, whereas solar energy, maritime or wind energy. They can also count on a strong community involvement, and their smaller size is ideal for innovative approaches. And so the European Commission has launched the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative to further support the EU islands in their path towards decarbonation. But I won't say more on that because we have Lucia with us who will say more, I'm sure. So now let me present you a few best practices from EU projects we are involved in. First of all, let me take you to La Réunion, which is a French island located in the Indian Ocean and which is neighbor to Mauritius. So in La Réunion, we are part of the Twin Solar project, which is a Horizon Europe project, which aims to improve research and innovation to achieve a massive integration of solar renewables. Because indeed, the island has a strong potential for solar energy, but is now facing some technical limits to increase its share of renewables. So we work with the University of La Réunion and two other top research centers, namely DTU and Fraunhofer ISE, to further research on that. And so they investigate the topics of solar and load forecasting, smart energy management, and design, modeling, and sizing of energy systems, with the objective of testing some innovative solutions in the Terre Sainte campus, so the university campus, to supply it with 80% of renewable energy. And in addition to research, Twin Solar also aims at building partnerships and reinforcing capacities to tackle the remoteness that La Réunion face, being an outermost region of Europe. We also capitalize on best practices with other insular territories facing similar challenges. So we are very happy to exchange with you. And we would also like to invite you to check our website for more information, and if you want to join our next summer school in La Réunion in November. And before I finish this presentation, I would like to quickly present our second project in Mayotte, which is called Maesha, and which is also a Horizon 2020 project, gathering 22 partners from 10 countries in Europe with the objective to decarbonate the energy system in Mayotte and other EU islands. And so to do so, the project is deploying large-scale renewable energy sources. It is also developing solutions to increase the flexibility of renewable energy sources. We also try to involve the local communities through energy communities. And finally, we work towards a larger replication through a replicability study in 6 other islands, namely Gozo, Favignana, Madeira, Saint Barts, Gran Canaria, and La Réunion. So that's all for me. I thank you for your attention, and I'm available to take any question. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claire. And just so everyone is aware, we are going to have a question and answer session toward the end of our hour today. We are a little behind, but hopefully we can find time to explore some of those questions. If you do have questions for a particular presenter, please put them up in the Q&A session and identify the presenter that you wish to present your question to. Next up, we have David. Please take it away, David.
Hi, good day, everyone. Just sharing my screen here. Just give me a yes if I am good to go. Can you see my presentation?
You are good to go.
Excellent. Well, pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of the experience that RMI has had working in the Caribbean region over the past 10 plus years. As you can imagine, there's a whole lot of lessons learned over 10 years that I can share, but I'm going to focus very strategically on a few things, primarily because I think I want to demystify the challenges around the transition. And essentially, if I were to put everything, if I was cooking a nice Caribbean curry goat or something like that, right? I would put this in the context of these 4 key ingredients. Leadership, very key, and I'll give one good example of how it sort of transformed the transition Barbados. I'd like to highlight it because Barbados set the tone at the top. Very aggressive, very firm and clear regulatory policies, and essentially work towards a pathway that exploded the transition efforts. And that has actually led to some challenges and lessons learned in the past 2 years or so, where, similar to some of the other presenters described, we have a situation where the grid is now basically can't take any more intermittent renewable energy, and they're like deeply focused on solving that through battery storage, which brings us to sort of the next step, which is planning. It's very critical that the transition is planned. Take the time. It takes more time upfront to plan, but it helps you to prevent future challenges, either with grid integration or just the project in itself. And I can't tell you how many examples of rush projects going through a process that failed because they weren't appropriately planned. With that said, I forgot to mention, key part of this, creating strategic partnerships. There are lots of supporting entities, some here on this call today, that are available for either high level or very integrated, deep level support around transition processes. So make sure to reach out, network, and engage others. And then simply implement, get it done. I love there's a company that just says, get it done. I love that mentality. You plan, you set the policies, set the tone, and then you just implement, because that's where we're stuck a lot of times. We don't take that very next step, which is just to implement. It's that saying, perfect is the enemy of the good. And when we do that, we get nothing accomplished and nothing done. And then lessons learned, refine, repeat, get it done again, because this is not a one-stop shop or a one-time activity. It's going to take multiple iterations. And each time you do it, you'll do it better. And with that said, I'd like to just share a few examples. Critical facilities microgrids. This is an example from Barbados where rooftop solar dominates the transition effort. And you wouldn't think rooftop solar would actually have such a deep impact on a country's transition, but at the scale with the incentives that were put in place, it just took off. And critical facilities microgrids is a really good example of how many countries can start small and get that first step into the renewable energy transition. We are devastated by hurricanes throughout the year, but year after year, we're having record trends set with hurricanes. So critical facilities, a school that serves as a hurricane shelter, clinics, healthcare centers, banks, police stations, all of the administrative services that governments provide during and post-storm require that they have access to resilient, clean energy that through a distributed system where it doesn't depend on a grid that sometimes go for, in some cases, tens or hundreds of miles from a centralized power plant. So that's one key way of getting it done. I mentioned Barbados, they implemented 100+ megawatts of renewable energy in the past 2 to 3 years. A significant amount of energy, and most of that was done through rooftop. A good example of resilience and how it's such a key part, because we're affected by hurricanes that are getting stronger and more frequent every year. Essentially, we need to build systems that are resilient to Category 5 and beyond. Essentially, this is an example here of Ragged Island in the Bahamas, where the system was designed to be low to the ground. The racking system is very secure. It has different design mechanisms, both in the sort of securing the panels themselves, but also ways to prevent wind from getting under the panels themselves. Just being too low to the ground is one example of how you prevent wind from getting under there, but there are other design mechanisms that were put in place to basically make this 180 miles per hour plus Category 5 resilient. So a couple of other things, the tilt, you know, if you imagine a sailboat, big sail, open to the wind, it will take a lot more pressure, and hence why the boats move faster. But if you tilt that sail where the wind essentially doesn't have much surface, there's less resistance, less pressure on the panels in the system, and therefore it will more than likely survive. Another good example, battery storage. I think a good project to reference here, there are many, but battery storage is key. I mentioned the context of Barbados and how it slowed down their transition in the past year. But this is a good example from BVI and Anegada BVI. Similar to some of the other systems that were described, this is an island amongst other islands, part of the BVI chain of islands. And essentially, they have an undersea cable, and to relieve the dependence on that, to relieve the dependence on transporting fuel from island to island, which creates all kinds of challenges, plus it's very expensive. They're now implementing their own microgrid system with battery storage so that they can have higher resilience and higher dependence, less dependence on centralized grids and generation plants. I think that's it for me. I hope I stayed within the 7 minutes. I tried to do my best to make up some time.
Thank you so much, David. You did great. Zakia, you're up next. Please take the floor.
Great, thank you. I'm also just going to share my screen. And I think you should be seeing it. Correct? Yeah. I'm also continuing on the current theme of trying to demystify our current transition. And here I argue that this current sustainable transition is fundamentally a very political struggle, and thus any efforts of shifting away from fossil fuels and decarbonized societies and our economic activities will not prove effective without really confronting, restructuring, and realigning dominant systems of power, which are all entrenched in this very deep-seated and largely unchallenged form of power. I'm not sure what you can all see, so I'm just trying to rearrange my screen here. And academic research has unfortunately till now only exposed the technical difficulties of moving away from the high carbon systems, but continues to neglect the political and economic factors. And I believe that understanding the different diffusion and adoption patterns is important, and we need to ground this ongoing transition in the global south, or here in this island setting, more properly, also within our historical and spatial dimensions. Sorry about that. And so what do I mean with carbon lock-ins, and why do I say it's a continued obstruction of climate policy? So carbon lock-in refers to positive feedbacks or increasing returns to the adoption of a selected technology, whether that is solar panels or electric vehicles. However, this also goes beyond that and is confined and entails a deeply entrenched institutional network and regulatory systems, which, if we don't contest this, will only allow minute infrastructural and behavioral changes. So the question I set out to answer for myself was, why do islands still face conflict and delay in implementation of decarbonization policies, with investments and contributions in some cases remaining trivial and non-existent? And what I then did, was I went to Dominica, Martinique, La Réunion, and Mauritius. I know, not a bad life. And I started asking people. I think we had over 500 participants, their views on current low carbon transport projects, whether it was a tram in Mauritius or the expansion of the bus network in Martinique, and just asking them about their lived experiences when it came to transportation and solar panels. And what I found was really also what I took away was just that we need a broader set of user survey on lived experiences than is currently being consulted at the moment. So we need to put citizens at the center of this transition. I believe that this fosters social legitimacy and also gives the citizens in return a sense of agency. But this, of course, leads to more social and institutional acceptance. And we need to do this because what I saw is that transport experience differs greatly among racial and socioeconomic divide on the island. And this has, and if we don't address it, this will become a major social justice issue. And what I've also noticed was that citizens, they really appreciate transparency, ease of use of transport services, the perceived usefulness is that what are accessibility and affordability dimensions of the current transport systems. And of course, we need to talk about status base and the social influence of the current transport system. I'm talking here mostly about individual car ownership. And however, a very good news for me was how do islanders envision sustainable mobility? And most of them went in the direction of green, transport, accessible, affordable, reliable, sustainable. And I think this is really good news we can work with. Another part of the research we did was that we had 4 group discussions as well as semi-structured interviews with about 60 representatives from NGOs, the academia, policymakers, etc., where we asked them, what are the carbon lock-ins? What are the specific barriers you see towards a sustainable transition? And we then split it up into economic, institutional, regulatory, and infrastructural. Economic lock-ins went into the direction of lack of upfront financing, sound business cases, monopolies of electricity and transport authorities can be resistant, human resource capacities, battery technologies and their costs, etc. We, with institutional lock-ins, we went a bit deeper and more systemic. We talked about the compromised institutional design and inadequate climate strategy of the international regime. So what are the norms, the rules, the fact that climate debt are debts and not just swaps for not just grants given after a cyclone. The fact that the small islands still have the lowest percentage of the Green Climate Fund, the administrative barriers towards accessing the Green Climate Fund, also the vested interests of the global fossil fuel industry to delay the need to reduce reliance, the administrative capacity of government and operators, and of course, especially in the context of climate, which is important, crisis and disaster management response, which tends to focus on short-term measures, such as emergency response measures, recovery measures, but not go in depth into long-term adaptability measures. On most of the islands which we studied, we saw that there were a lot of regulatory lock-ins, outdated and inadequate tariffs, the current energy supply systems and regulations and how that's connected, the silos of operation, the fact that we don't have a lot of up-to-date baseline data for analysis and decision-making, and the current fossil fuel subsidies and fuel surcharge. And we also have infrastructural lock-ins, looking at the lack of charging infrastructure and standardization, grid stability issues, range anxiety, battery power. What we also asked our participants to do was rank these lock-ins. So green meant that they see these lock-ins as not being very prevalent. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of green lock-ins. Most of them are yellow, which were more like a medium risk, and red, which were seen as very risky and all the more harder to overcome. And we also then interlocked these lock-ins. So we saw that institutional lock-ins led to a lot of economic lock-ins. Institutional lock-ins again led to regulatory, which led to economic and infrastructural. So what I can say is that we are dealing with a current system of lock-ins, but this is not a permanent condition, and we can get out of this, and regulatory lock-ins remain very susceptible to lock-ins. And if these institutional lock-ins are overcome, then all other lock-ins can be unlocked. I would not like to leave on a negative tone. So we also asked them to identify the intervention for overcoming those lock-ins. And now what I've done is kind of group or cluster all these solutions into what I call the meadow, inspired by Donella Meadows, a very seminal scholar looking at systems change, which look at policy, technologies, behavior. So these are like open data policy, subsidized public transit, urban design, etc. But we also need extreme and efficient changes. And these are not my words. These are, this means radical democracy, eat the rich kind of tax subsidies, more participatory actions, so more citizen actions, actual economic and development policies aligned with sustainable goals. We need the global just transition, empowerment of youth movements. We were very vocal on the islands, mobilization of finance, degrowth economic models, and just more accountability. This means reform of the World Bank and the IMF, fossil fuel litigation, etc. So it's a long path, but I think we're on the right way. And I will end with this slide because I think this is this comes from a place of hope and possibility. And I hope I was well with the time.
Well, thank you so much, Zakia. Hope and possibility are really what brings all of us here, I think. So that was a good and helpful way to end that presentation. We are becoming very pressed for time. So hopefully folks will be able to hold on for our final presenter, Lucia.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks for everybody for still sticking with us and listening. If you can please, Michael, let me know when you see the presentation and if it's in correct mode.
It appears to be. You're in good shape.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry. So I'm joining, as I mentioned, as a representative of Clean Energy for EU Island Secretariat. It's a European Commission initiative to work with European islands on energy transition and decarbonization. I will take a few seconds to present what the Secretariat does, and then I'll dive into a topic of decarbonization of the island grids. So Secretariat has been there since 2018 and we've been working with more than 100 islands, engaging through support, as you've heard also from Avril earlier, and from Claire. We had 30 for 2030, so 30 islands that have indicated their ambitions to become 100% renewables until 2030. And we're also opening a call for follower islands that will be coming out later this month. In addition to that, we also do this regulatory analysis like what I will represent today, where we also have webinars and workshops with the different stakeholders trying to understand what are the challenges that they're facing in the energy transition process and what are some of the recommendations that we can propose both on the policy side, but also on the technology side. And then finally, as a Secretariat, of course, we keep the network of the island stakeholders. We organize an annual forum of EU islands, which happens across different islands in Europe. These are the 30 islands. I will not go through that. These are the 30 islands that have set their ambition to become 100% renewables until 2030, and with whom we're working on daily basis on the different topics, supporting them in this process. But today here, I wanted to touch upon one of the activities we have been working on in the past year and a half, and that's analyzing of the electricity grids of non-interconnected European islands in Greece, in Italy, in France, including French Polynesia, Réunion, but also Dutch islands including Aruba and Bonaire. And in this study, we look into, of course, European policy and regulation. What is the setting already there for islands, and where in this regulation are islands set maybe as exceptions to certain rules? And then we look into these 10 cases to look into really specific challenges that are being faced by the islands. How are these island systems set up? As we know, each island has a unique system. And while some, let's say, solutions or potential technologies can be used on different islands, there is always analysis of a specific system to show which is the best techno-economic, let's say, solution, or also including the island stakeholders who would be participating in this process. And then as a result, which is what I'll go into in a moment, is recommendations. And we provide 19 recommendations, which are both technology and regulatory recommendations. And then it's sort of for island stakeholders to choose which ones are fit for them. While we analyze non-interconnected islands, the recommendations are also for interconnected islands, and in some cases can be applied to the remote areas on the mainland. And when we look, and I don't want to focus too much on the challenges, but we looked, you can check out the study and see, we looked into the challenges for each of the use cases or case studies. And these are some of the challenges that we see across European islands. And that's, of course, that there is power interruptions that we see sometimes due to climate, but sometimes also due to electricity systems and disturbances that we see from connection of variable renewables already. We see high curtailment of variable renewables. We see that there is limited resources to implement some of the new solutions, that there is a need for implementation of smart grid solutions first, so that they can enable, let's say, other decarbonization of the island, the controllability of distributed renewables, and then finally, there is currently very complex and in some cases fragmented permitting and connecting procedures for renewables. But not to, as Zakia also said, not to end on the bad note here. I want to go through few recommendations in light of the time. I won't go in details, but these are some of the recommendations that European islands find to be priority in our discussions with them. So on the technology side, there is really looking into how can we implement more hybrid power systems. There is really a requirement and sort of a must towards sector coupling electricity sector with transport, with water systems, with waste systems, so that we're solving multiple issues that with one solution, and also being more economical in this process of the decarbonization. Then, as I mentioned, implementation of the smart grids, which enable decarbonization, the monitoring and the forecast of renewables, and then, of course, storage systems, which I've also seen some comments in the comment section here during the workshop. And then on the other side, the market and regulatory framework, there is a high focus on modernization of the, let's say, island tailoring of the grid codes. We have the grid codes that define how the grids function, that are typically set for the mainland and not for the islands. And then defining remuneration for the curtailed energy, and then finally looking into virtual power plants and aggregation of already existing generation. And I want to close the presentation with some of the examples of the best practice, although you could check out more details in the study. On one hand, let's say we see in Greece that there is really, both from the policy, but also from the implementation and tendering side, there is best practice for hybrid power plants. In Portugal, in Azores, we see sector coupling with, for example, vehicle to grid being tested for security of supply for the grid, but then also on the other hand, this optimizing of the grid codes, which we see has already happened in Madeira, on Madeira Islands, and is now happening on Azores. And then finally, we also heard from Claire some examples from the French islands. The EDF operated islands have some lessons learned on the storage integration for grid stability. So Michael, I will close with that, and thank you so much for the time that you have given me today.
Well, thank you so much, Lucia, and thank you to each one of our presenters. We are now a little over time, so I'm going to make an executive moderator decision, I guess, because I wanted to make sure that every presenter had the opportunity to offer something of a closing comment. And I've been watching the questions that have been rolling in. And there is one that has jumped out, and I think it's an important question to hear comment from our presenters on, because this is the first session of our virtual Island Summit. And it relates to collaboration in terms of planning and finding solutions on a go-forward basis. So beginning with Danon and then moving through our presenters and ending with Lucia once more, we'll give you the last word. In about 45 to 60 seconds, can you comment on where you think long-term collaboration between islands, countries, is it a possibility? Is it something that we should be driving the discussion? I mean, we are all here at a virtual island summit. Many of the folks who are here were on Prince Edward Island for the Global Sustainability Island Summit, and collaboration was a huge conversation. So beginning with you, Danon, in 45 to 60 seconds, do you see opportunities in your context for long-term collaboration to achieve the goals that you've laid out today?
Yeah, for sure. Most of the islands have common issues, and we have never contributed to the climate change effect, but we were the first collaterals. So we have to join hands together, because alone it will be difficult. As I mentioned, the various issues in terms of financing, in terms of technology, and all the things. And when we are talking about ocean renewables are not very mature technology, because the main countries developing these technology don't find the needs to invest in that sector. But if we all the islands can contribute to be an organization, an association, and this is where we can create the economy of scale to develop these types of technologies which are not yet mature.
Okay, thank you so much. Avril, you're next.
I don't want to step on Lucia's toes when she starts talking about the Secretariat later on, but that is a huge networking opportunity for islands, and I think it's a huge advantage. It's really, really important. So, for example, we are part of the 30 Renewable Islands by 2030 initiative. We're helping, that's helping us not only through their workshops and getting some technical expertise within the Secretariat, but also to learn from the other islands. And something that strikes me at every one of the Clean Energy for EU Island Secretariat forums is that how different the islands are, how different our weather is, how different everything is between all of the islands. A lot of us have the same challenges over and over and over again. And so I think by collaborating and working together, instead of reinventing the wheel on each island, learning from one another, I have met people from the other Irish islands at these forums that I wouldn't get the chance to meet, and we have a chance to discuss things and issues and common problems. And so I think that's the only way forward, is to collaborate and to try and tackle this project, this issue, and together. And so I think that will be the only way that we can solve all our collective problems. And it's been very successful so far.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Claire, your comments on collaboration.
Yes, thank you. I think, of course, cooperation is absolutely key, and for islands, more than maybe on other issues, because as we mentioned, the islands are very diverse, but they share some common issues. And not to repeat what the other said very well, I just want to add that sometimes this kind of cooperation can also lead to projects, and for instance to EU projects, which of course are great for exchange of best practices, but also to test some solutions in a smaller scale before maybe trying to make it bigger.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, excellent points made by everyone already. I'll just add, no question, collaboration is almost the only way for islands who have very meager resources, both on finance and like individual people capacity, usually smaller populations and less access to everything. So collaboration is absolutely key. It's very important, not only across countries, across islands that we collaborate, but also bring in strategic partners. I mean, it sounds like I'm self-promoting in a way because, but I've seen this happen so much, including as CEO of the Anguilla Electricity Company for many years. Getting things done when you're under pressure just to provide reliable, consistent electricity is hard. You don't have the energy to, you know, no pun intended, don't have the energy to make it happen. Collaboration is key, breaking down those barriers and bringing in strategic partners.
Understood. Thank you so much, David. Zakia, in terms of your research, you know, you did focus on some hearts and minds issues, I guess, if I could put it that way. Did collaboration figure into some of the discussion in what you were doing, both whether at a high level or at a more micro level?
Always. At a micro level, I think, because I'm from Mauritius, and when I was like across the world in Dominica, in St. Lucia, I think collaboration was always there because people were so amazed at how similar our cultures or our islands were. So it was really heartwarming to see. And but also at a high level, I think I had the absolute privilege of really taking 4 years as part of my doctoral research to see what every single island was doing. So when I was presenting that to policymakers who don't have time to see, people were very impressed. Like in Mauritius, they were behind Barbados when it came to the electric vehicle transition. So and they didn't know what Barbados was doing when it came to a standardization of electric vehicle charging. And I think we need more of this south to global south collaboration, definitely island. And what I also want to say is that I think collaboration has already done so much. Like the Association of Small Island States was one of the main fighting blocks behind the 1.5 degree to remain alive, or just the 1.5 degree limit at COP21. And I think that was only possible by working together and collaborating and speaking with one voice. And I think we've already achieved so much together. And of course, collaboration is the only way forward, in my opinion. And I think most people I was interacting during my research agreed.
Understood. Lucia, in terms of your experience at the EU level and some of these special projects that you're doing, I'm interested to know what level of collaboration and cooperation is happening between those projects. You know, is the left hand speaking to the right hand when they're doing that work?
Well, we're definitely trying to foster the collaboration, and as we also heard from Avril, these organized events and the workshops and the forum and the fora to have islands collaborating with each other. However, we also see that despite that, for example, in the grids, which is a discussion of the session today, we see that in a lot of these cases, it's collaboration between, for example, different civil organizations or municipalities or the governments, but there is less of collaboration between the system operators, the regulatory agencies that are setting the rules on how these grids are operating. And that's something that we are trying now to work on, and also sort of to bring forward as a really need on European level, because you do have collaboration within the bigger system operators on the mainland, but then on the island system operators where they're in some cases lacking maybe resources, lacking people, lacking knowledge. As also was mentioned earlier by David, having these knowledge institutes collaborate with the smaller utility companies, with the smaller DSOs is really important, and we find it, and we're trying to sort of help that, yeah, as a secretariat. But one thing that I wanted to mention, and that's that sometimes we're reached out as, okay, you represent European island, and European islands are more advanced in certain way. This is not necessarily the case, yeah. You will see some of the best practices that we show, but among European islands, there is really a variety, and we see that there is a big need and a benefit for both sides to exchange practices between European islands and non-European islands, yeah? And we see that there is similarities in the challenges that we're facing, although sometimes, of course, technical aspects might be different, yeah? But the collaboration is needed, yeah?
Understood. And frankly, that's where organizations like Island Innovation and events like this bring people together to start those conversations and hopefully keep them going. Folks, we're now 15 minutes over time, so I am going to call it there. I want to thank each and every one of you for your excellent presentations and your points of view that you brought forward. I'm sure that your chat has been pinging the same way that mine has. There's a lot of discussion happening right now, and you've prompted some good talk. So I would like to think, at any rate, that our Virtual Island Summit is off to a very good start with our first session this morning. And thank you so much, each and all of you, for your perspectives today. Christian, back to you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your wonderful job moderating this session. And thank you so much, Lucija, Danen, Abril, Claire, Sakia, and David for your remarkable presentations and speeches. We have a lot of people in the chat and, well, a lot of questions that went unanswered, but we will surely get a chance to address those in the future. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session today. And I want to mention, for all of you who might have missed it, we announced very exciting news during our opening session, is that we are going to be hosting the second Global Sustainable Island Summit. This time is going to be in the Caribbean archipelago of St. Kitts and Nevis. So please look forward to the information that our colleagues are pasting in the chat to get to know more about this event that is going to be from May 27 to the 29th of 2025. So you have plenty of time to schedule this and travel there so we can meet all in person for remarkable sessions as well. Please note that all attendees of the Virtual Island Summit will get an additional discount on the early bird ticket using the coupon that you will see on the chat. I want to also welcome you on, or actually invite you to our next session. Our next session is titled Harnessing Ocean Energy, the Potential of Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion in Seeds. And this session is sponsored by the Plotech Consortium. It will start at noon New York, 5 p.m. London. So we hope to see you there. And for any person that hasn't followed us yet on Instagram, please follow us on Instagram at @Island Innovation, @Island Innovation. You will see also in the chat the instructions. It's very easy. We will post a lot of things related to the summit and our upcoming events there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Let's have an amazing virtual summit ahead. And thank you for your participations and contributions through these 6 years and counting. Thank you, everyone.